for my monthly reading wrap up. We are through the month of April, moving into the month of May, and I'm going to update you guys on the books that I finished for the month. So without much further ado, let's just go ahead and get into it. I will say this. My reading was pretty good this month, although probably not as good as it could be because I have been all wrapped up in this whole Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial. So typically when I would be like listening to audiobooks, I'm like listening to like tidbits of the trial. It's probably not my finest moment, but if I'm being honest, that's what I've been distracted with this month as far as like listening to it's actually kind of crazy to even call it entertainment, but yeah, I mean that's what it's frankly been to me. So anyways, I do have some books, and I actually think all of them are physical books that I finished this month. So let's just get into the first one, which is a book that I touched on at the end of my reading wrap up last month, The Burning of Bridget Cleary by Angela Burke. I've been working on this because I am doing a Folklore and Fairy Tale Friday on changelings / Irish fairies, and this has a lot to do with that. I gave this book a 2 out of 5 stars. It's not that I didn't think it wasn't interesting. It was just like it was a bit of a slog at some times. The author really tried to paint the atmosphere at the time and really describe like cultural implications of things going on and how like the social interactions of the day were kind of carried about with the religion as well as kind of social perception, just like all these kinds of nuanced things, which I can appreciate, but just frankly, I just wanted to hear about the story of Bridget Cleary, and I got like a brief history in Ireland and small towns in Ireland. So it was, because of that, a little bit slow for me, but overall, the story itself is, I hate to say it, similar to like the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard trial. It's like darkly fascinating. I went ahead and read a Stephen King book in the month of April, and I read Full Dark No Stars, which this is actually probably one of the more recent books that I've read from Stephen King since it was published in 2010. I've been like kind of going through his older catalog of books. So this was a fairly modern one for me. And I believe there were 4 short stories in this. It is a short story collection. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. And I would say out of all of the short stories in this, my favorite one was A Good Marriage. And my least favorite one was probably, I think, Big Driver. I mean, honestly, they were all good, so it's like hard for me to pick one that I didn't enjoy. But like I said, Stephen King, to me, is really known for his short stories. It was what he was first publishing at the time. I guess also for his like long epic novels. But I feel like this is kind of his bread and butter with like being able to evoke emotion out of you in a condensed period or a condensed story. I feel like that's a good writer. So yeah, this was a nice little revisit to Stephen King without having to commit to like a full-blown like 800-page book. The next book I read was The Guest List by Lucy Foley. I had this on my TBR for quite some time, and I actually found this copy in a Goodwill, so I picked it up naturally. And I have to say, I probably shouldn't have read this while I'm planning my wedding. I actually did not realize this was about a wedding. I had just seen this on a lot of TBR thriller lists, and I was like, hey, I like Reese's book club recommendations. Thriller seems pretty popular. Why not? So I think that's why I threw it on my own TBR. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. I basically sat down and read this in like 2 different sessions. So I found it very interesting and very exciting and I guess thrilling, if you want to use that word. And it kept me definitely turning the page. I was like, okay, let me just figure out. Okay, this is written actually in the perspective of all the different guests at the wedding, and so it's really interesting because you get the different perspectives of all of the different wedding guests, the bride, the groomsmen, the groom, the best man, maid of honor. Just gonna list off every wedding attendee in this book, but basically it's cool because you're basically piecing together a murder mystery in this. Okay, this is definitely, and I have to say, I don't give out 1 stars very often, but I give a 1 star to this book, and if I could give it less stars, I definitely would. And it is The Dark Secrets of Playboy by S.A. Tettenbaum, I want to say. That's how you pronounce his name. Honestly, I'm like mad I spent money on this, and the reason that I picked this up was because I saw Reddit post in the books section, I think. I think I was on the book subreddit or something like that. And someone had posted about this, and it got a lot of upvotes. Like, it seemed exciting. And I really enjoyed reading Holly Madison's Down the Rabbit Hole. And I thought this might be similar because this is based off like a valet's account of the Playboy Mansion back in the 70s. And so I thought I don't know, I just find Playboy and the whole like mansion and Hugh Hefner and that whole world really weird and interesting, and again, fascinating in a dark way. Because number one, I grew up with like the general old Hollywood mystique surrounding Playboy. I watched The Girls Next Door, and I like the idea of like girls living in a mansion. Like, it seemed like a big sorority house to me, and it seemed like a lot of fun. So I just always growing up thought it was like cool. I had a very positive perspective about it. Now, obviously, as I've gotten older and thought about it more, read Holly Madison's book and kind of understood more of the dynamic behind it, I realized how dark and gross and icky it is. And so I'm just trying to give you guys some background as to why I picked up this book, because frankly, like I said, I'm sad I spent money on it, and I'm a little embarrassed I read it and finished it because it was awful. If I'm picking low-hanging fruit, this book has so many grammatical issues. I don't think our editor ran through this book. I don't even think the author reread the book himself, because not only are there grammatical issues, misspellings, periods where there shouldn't be, there are just massive formatting errors in this. And I'm not even someone who's like really hoity-toity or like stuck up about that kind of stuff, but it was so noticeable in this. It was distracting and almost embarrassing for the author. At least I was embarrassed for the author. It was just so poorly edited. There's no page numbers. There's no chapters. So it's basically just one long chunk of reading. Yeah, I don't think I like the author himself for writing this book. I found the way he described the women very icky and uncomfortable for me. I felt like he was objectifying the women in this book, and I felt like he could have painted the picture of Playboy. Obviously, there's a lot of nudity involved, and there's a lot of like, general or more openness about sex in the Playboy Mansion. But the way he talked about it, it just was like, dude, you're gawking. You're paying a little bit too much attention to women's bodies. And then you take to a book and describe every single like nook and cranny of a woman's body that is completely unnecessary. You're also married at the time. I don't like it. It made me feel uncomfortable. And like I said, I'm a little embarrassed that I finished this book. So I forewarn you, if you're sensitive to that kind of stuff, do not read this book. It's terrible. And then on top of that, I just have a massive problem with the fact that I don't know if he ran like some of the stories he told by the people that it was based off of. Meaning, there are huge trigger warnings in this book. There's a lot of sexual misconduct, sexual assault, rape, terrible things that he discusses and rehashes. And since they weren't necessarily his stories to tell, I didn't care for the fact that like I feel like he's profiting off of that. And then I bought the book. So yeah. Don't buy this book. Don't read it. It's not worth it. Honestly, if you want a good retelling of the Playboy Mansion, go straight to the girls. Go read Holly Madison's book. Go read some of their other books. I'm sure there's other Playboy bunnies out there who have rehashed their stories. Don't read this, guys. It's awful. It doesn't make sense. He talks about a lot of the situations as well, like he was there. And I'm just like, there's no way you would have that much detail or remember that much detail about something that you most likely weren't even there for. Like, he talks about like car rides and stuff where it's like, were you in the car? But you're able to like retell her facial expressions and how she was acting. Like, seemed like a lot of fluff. You don't seem like a great person. And I get that, like, I've gone off on a whole rant here. I get that the 70s was a different time and different things were quote unquote acceptable or just kind of like slept through the cracks. But you were privy to it and you did nothing about it. And it's not like you couldn't have gone and gotten a different job. You just were like, well, I'm putting food on the table, so whatever. But like, you also covered up for like Hugh Hefner and some of his guests as well. And it's like, so not only were you privy to these acts, but you covered for them as well. And then you told about them in a book that you're profiting off of, the terrible things that have happened to other people. What is your problem? Don't buy this book. I'm mad I did. I thought it was going to be so different. Okay, last but not least, I finished You Are a Badass, How to Stop Doubting Your Greatness and Start Living an Awesome Life by Jen Sincero. I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. This was also a book I picked up from Goodwill on a whim, and I just felt like reading a fluffy book. This was very rah-rah, shish kebab kind of writing, which I'm not mad at. Sometimes we need that in our life, but it felt a lot like, it felt very like manifesty and law of attraction-y, and like some of it didn't make sense to me. So while I did think sometimes you just need someone to be like, you're a badass, love yourself, you got it, that's great and all, but you know, it didn't seem very practical sometimes. So that's why I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. I started reading like a couple pages at a time, and then I was like, you know what, let me just finish this. This isn't going to be a life-changing book for me anyway. So then I just sat down and read the whole thing in like an hour or two, and I was like, yep. What was I expecting? I don't know. I guess that was exactly what I was expecting. So 3 out of 5 stars. Anyways, guys, those are the books that I read for the month of April. I hope you guys enjoyed rehashing some of the books that I read. And let me know in the comment section down below if there have been some bangers that you have read in the past month. Book recommendations for me, or maybe some book launches I should keep an eye out for. Books maybe you want me to read or do videos on. Anything in the comment section down below. And as always, I hope you guys are happy and healthy. And don't forget to rate, comment, subscribe, share with your friends and family. Hit that notification bell, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye, guys.